Donald Trump's indictment wasn't a total surprise, but it was still a bombshell, a political development of historic proportions that will occupy the national political debate for weeks, if not months to come. The Point starts right now. Up first, Ed Cox, the head of the Republican Party in New York, who's joining me remotely. You know, Ed, when I first asked you to do the show, we never anticipated that Donald Trump would have been indicted. I wonder what your reaction was to the decision by the Manhattan District Attorney to indict a former president, the first time it's ever happened.
Well, this one's been rattling around for a long time, and I analyzed it as a lawyer a while back and put out a release on it right away. It's a very weak case, got hairs all over it. You're talking about a misdemeanor here in New York, and of course, he's just a New York district attorney. And there's a statute of limitation of 2 years. Maybe you can stretch it to 7 by counting the times that he's not in New York or this or that, but that goes back to an old case. It has to do with potential fugitives. Clearly, he's not. You know where he is. You've always known where he is. And then and to try and stretch it by then bringing in a federal crime with respect and by the way, that misdemeanor is normally settled for a sum of money or something. It's a bookkeeping issue. The federal one is an issue with respect to not filing the amount paid in so-called hush money and not filing it as a campaign expense that is supposed to cover up something for campaign purposes. But the federal law, always where there's a personal reason, as there is here, to protect your family, to keep this this from being public with respect to your family. The preference is always to say, no, a personal expenditure, you do not have to, and you do not have to file it. And there is a statute of limitations of 5 years there too, and it's been 7 years. So, and normally those claims are settled again for some, not as a felony, but as you admit guilt and you pay a sum to the Federal Elections Commission. So this is clearly a hooked up case, and you have to say it's political as a result.
So I guess the question a lot of people are asking is, does having a presidential candidate who has been charged or indicted make it more difficult for the Republican Party?
Yeah, no, for Donald Trump, you're going to find Republicans rallying around him who may not prefer him to be the candidate. And that is happening right now. Now, how long that lasts, what the impact is, but certainly, and the polls will show it among Republican primary voters, he has shot up in those polls.
See, the reason I was asking the question was because earlier in the week there was a Quinnipiac poll where 57% of those polled said that being indicted should disqualify somebody for running for president. Do you agree, disagree? Do you think it was mostly Democrats who were interviewed? What's your thoughts?
Sure. If you ask the question that way, you'll get that answer. But that's assuming it's an indictment that is a good indictment for something that's serious. Indictment, that seems serious. Indictment for 34 counts, that seems serious. But if you're talking about basically a misdemeanor, if someone's accused of a misdemeanor, should that prevent him from running for the President of the United States? You get a different answer.
So why do you think that Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, brought the case? I mean, let's go through it. The U.S. attorney in the Southern District passed on this. The Federal Election Commission passed on this. Alvin Bragg, when he first became DA, disbanded the grand jury that was investigating this case. So what changed? Why do you think that he decided to bring the case now?
You stated all the good reasons why the case shouldn't be brought. I think the prosecutors who he dismissed, who wanted to bring the case, they wrote a book about it, which is very unprofessional of them. And I think that book was arguing why he should have brought the case. And then I think a lot of outside forces that never examined the basis for the case came down on him. And I think he just got pushed by that political pressure and reacted to it and felt he has to do it. And I think he must, and some of the professionals in his office must know this will get dismissed in the end. not by the judge, probably not by a jury. And they didn't want to bring it, but he felt forced to do it for the political pressure.
Do you think he was pressured by other Democrats, by the White House? Was he thinking of his own political reelection and realizing that because he had freed so many people without bail that he might have trouble getting reelected, and he thought this would help him? I mean, what do you think's going on?
No, that could be in the back of his mind that he this will help his reelection. I'm not sure it will if it gets dismissed summarily by the judge. Of course, the judge has to get reelected here too in New York, so he may be reluctant if he can find any basis to move it forward to a jury. In the end, I'm not sure once the arguments are made that this will be beneficial to him, and I think the people involved will be disappointed. And it will also, there are other cases coming down. If this is the first one to get dismissed or tried and dismissed by the jury in the end, I think it's going to actually hurt the other cases. It's going to make them all look as if they're not a bona fide case. It's another Russia thing. That really is just a get Trump because you don't like him.
We only have about 1 minute left in this section, but I'm curious if you keep saying that it's going to be dismissed by a jury. So you think that Mr. Trump could get a fair trial here in Manhattan?
I mean, I've been in jury pools, and I think it's going to be very hard for him with all this publicity and the animus that exists here, and it depends upon the voir dire and how many dismissals you can get. But he could, but it's unlikely.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.